Hello, welcome to Introduction to Linux, a beginner's guide, a beginners to intermediate guide. This is going to be a tutorial series. There are a couple of topics or modules to be covered. But before I proceed, I would like to take a few minutes to talk about the larger project in which this is a part of. So this tutorial is part of my application to the Digital Research Infrastructure, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion and Accessibility Champions pilot program, which was organized by Digital Research Alliance of Canada. So to tell you a little about the Digital Research Alliance of Canada, the Canadian government invested in digital research infrastructure for research edge. So the idea was to equip Canadian scientists and scholars with digital tools for world-class research and innovation. So sometime last year, the Alliance of Canada, so I call them the Alliance, basically Digital Research Alliance, the Alliance of Canada, the same thing. They called for a proposal on how to increase access for minorities on these tools, on these research tools. And I was one of the 82 successful candidates that were selected. And basically the idea I have was in order to increase awareness, to increase access to this research infrastructure, I felt like the major thing, aside the fact that people are not aware, is that there is a steep learning curve for the use of Linux. Most people are not aware on how to use Linux. So my idea was to teach Linux to these underrepresented groups, because my research area is highly computational. So I have some knowledge on these tools, and I felt like if you could teach more people, there will be an increase in uptake on the use of this research infrastructure. Because if you are already in Canada, if you're a researcher in Canada, you are eligible to use these research tools. So back to the tutorial, I would be talking about introducing Linux, what Linux entails, the basics of the Linux command line, composition, which means one of the beautiful things about Linux, stringing of commands together to perform a specific task. Then an explanation of the Linux file system, file management systems and permission, processes and resource management, and shell scripting, remote connection. So I'll be covering all these modules, and I might spend more time on certain modules and fewer times on other modules, because at the end of the day, the whole idea is to tailor these to the Alliance systems. So I'll spend more time as I see fit. So what exactly is Linux? Linux is a free open source software. It's free open source operating system software, which is not necessarily is an operating system, based on Unix. So what exactly is Unix? Unix is the OG of operating system. That is the operating system in which most other operating systems are built on. So Linux is not necessarily Unix per se, but it follows the same principles of Unix. And something like Mac OS is purely Unix. So Linux is widely used in servers, in high performance computing systems, embedded systems, and development environment. So when you hear people talk about servers, talk about clusters, so most of those systems are usually Linux based. So even when we are talking about like high performance computing systems, they are usually Linux based, and the reason is because Linux is stable, is flexible, and then that is highly customizable, and then because of the security measures that that is also part of Linux. So so there are some terminologies that I will be using in the course of this tutorial. So the first is the kernel, which is the core of the Linux operating system. So you can think of the kernel like the thing that bridges between the hardware and the software. So things that controls like the CPU scheduling, that controls memory management. So for example, how you move from like the RAM to the swap memory, the kernel is what controls things like that. The file system, process management, all those things. And the shell is the interface by which we interact with the kernel. And so the shell runs on something like the terminal. And if you on the right side of the screen here is what the terminal looks like. So this is a Linux terminal. Then the distro is the Linux version, that includes the kernel software. So the distro, there are several Linux distro. We have the Ubuntu, you have Red Hat, you have Hack Linux. There are a lot of them. In fact, it's what would you say? There are several Linux distro that there are some that are what would you say? They have they are open source quite alright, but you pay for them in the sense that you get support, something like that. You get technical support, while there are some that are just free for all. So then the root. So the root is what it looks like the C prompt in Windows. It's the top directory, like the top level directory in Linux. While sudo is super user do. So this is how you would run things as admin, if you will, in Windows, or how you run a command as root temporarily. And then the RWX flags means read, write, execute. And we would use most of all these lingua, in the course of the tutorial. You would come across the RWX flags when we talk about file permissions and things like that. Linux command line. So the Linux terminal is where the like I said, is where the commands are entered. So this is the application in which we use in accessing the shell. So the command line is something like this. This is where we sort of enter the command line. And so what happens here is the shell reads, it evaluates, it prints, and then it loops. So there are several types of shell. We have bash, we have sh, ksh, different types. But bash is the most widely used shell. Now there are several shortcuts for bash, and we would be using most of these shortcuts. I would be explaining how you use most of them. So for example, if I on the terminal here, supposing I just type something and it's telling me the command is not not found, whatever, because it's just rubbish, and then I just say Control L, you see, a Control L, that clears the screen. So these are some of the things like that. And so we will be using the shortcut. I'll be showing how most of them works in the course of the tutorial.